Welcome to Law Days Lattes, the podcast where we blend the world of law and business with a warm cup of information and common sense. I'm your host, Sidney Whelan, attorney, real estate investor, and business owner. Each week, we'll be your go-to source for legal insights, business advice, and so much more. Whether you're a seasoned professional, an ambitious entrepreneur, or simply someone seeking guidance, we'll have you covered. From navigating the legal landscape to empowering you with valuable business strategies, we'll explore the legal side of life and enjoy a virtual latte along the way. So, grab your favorite latte, get comfortable, and let's dive in to Law Days Lattes. Welcome back to Law Days Lattes. I'm your host, Sidney Whelan, founder of the Whelan Law Firm, serving North Central Missouri businesses and families in 3 convenient locations, Moberly, Carrollton, and Paris. Have you ever spent time around people who reminded you what leadership is really supposed to look like? I recently returned from New Orleans, where I attended the National Association of Counties conference. Thousands of elected officials from counties, parishes, and boroughs across America gathered to solve problems, share ideas, and learn from one another. These weren't celebrities. They weren't social media influencers. They weren't chasing headlines. They were county commissioners, supervisors, clerks, assessors, and public servants who quietly go to work every day making decisions that affect millions of Americans. Sometimes we forget that real leadership usually isn't found under bright lights. It's found in meeting rooms, county courthouses, volunteer committees, late-night budget meetings, and conversations where people disagree respectfully because everyone is trying to make their community a little better. That conference reminded me of something else. Leadership isn't a position. Leadership is a choice. But I came home with an even deeper conviction. Leadership is stewardship. The offices we hold, the businesses we build, the organizations we serve, and the influence we've been given are not really ours to own. They are opportunities temporarily entrusted to us. Our responsibility is not simply to hold them. It is to care for them, strengthen them, and leave them better than we found them. That's what stewardship is. One of my friends was recently appointed chair of the NACO Agricultural and Environment Committee. It's a tremendous honor for her, but it's also an enormous responsibility. Agriculture touches every American, whether they realize it or not. Watching someone accept that responsibility reminded me that leadership always asks something of us. It asks for our time, our wisdom, our patience, sometimes our courage. But above all, it asks us to be good stewards of the trust that others have placed in us. If you've been listening here for a while, you know that I've also had the privilege of watching my partner complete 2 years as chair of the Veterans and Military Services Committee for NACO. During those 2 years, I watched countless conversations centered around one simple question: how do we better serve the men and women who served our country? That is stewardship in action. Not because someone held an impressive title, but because they understood that leadership is about serving people, not serving yourself. One of the things that impressed me most about the conference was that leadership looked different on every person. Some were natural speakers. Others were quiet listeners. Some built consensus. Others solved technical problems. Some inspired people. Others organized people. Every leadership style mattered. I think that's an important lesson for all of us, but women especially. Too often we compare ourselves to someone else's leadership style. We think we have to sound like them, lead like them, command a room like them. But authentic leadership isn't imitation. It's influence. It's bringing your own gifts to the table and faithfully using them to serve others. Another lesson I took home is that leadership is almost always local before it becomes national. The roads we drive, emergency services, public health, economic development, agriculture, veteran services, parks, libraries, planning. These are decisions made by people who often receive very little recognition. Yet their decisions shape our everyday lives. Leadership isn't always glamorous. Sometimes leadership looks like sitting through a 4-hour budget meeting. Sometimes leadership means making unpopular decisions today for a better community tomorrow. Sometimes leadership simply means showing up when no one else wants to. And that's exactly what stewardship looks like. Quiet, consistent, faithful, often unnoticed. One thing became very clear to me. This country is filled with extraordinary people you've probably never heard of. People who quietly devote their lives to making their communities stronger. They aren't seeking fame, they're seeking solutions. They're planting trees whose shade they may never personally enjoy. To me, that's one of the highest expressions of stewardship. As I reflected on the conference, I kept thinking about something I've talked about before: legacy. We often think legacy is what happens after we're gone, but leadership is how we build that legacy while we're still here. Every meeting, every difficult conversation, every volunteer hour, every committee, every young person we mentor, every problem we help solve. Those become the bricks that build our legacy. Great leaders rarely begin with great responsibility. They begin by being faithful with the responsibility they already have, whether that's leading your family, your business, your church, your community, or simply being the person others know they can count on. Leadership isn't reserved for elected officials. You may lead a business, a family, a church committee, a nonprofit organization, a classroom, or simply your children. Leadership isn't measured by how many people report to you. It's measured by how many lives become better because you showed up. And perhaps that's the question we should ask ourselves every day. Am I acting like an owner, or am I acting like a steward? Owners often ask, what's in this for me? Stewards ask, how can I leave this better than I found it? I believe the answer to that question shapes both our leadership and our legacy. So today, I'd like to leave you with 3 questions. Where are you already leading without recognizing it? Where have you been waiting for permission instead of simply stepping forward? And how are you stewarding the opportunities, relationships, and influence that have been entrusted to you? Because leadership isn't something we're given, it's something we practice. One conversation, one decision, one act of service at a time. Until next time, remember to build it, protect it, and pass it on, because that's what faithful stewards do. And that's how legacies and leaders are made. Thank you for joining me today on Law Days and Lattes. If this episode encouraged you, would you do me a favor? Be sure to like it wherever you are on social media and share it with your friends. I'll see you next time here on Law Days and Lattes. Have a great week, my friends.
This podcast episode contains general information for discussion purposes only. Each case is different and must be judged on its own merits. Missouri rules generally prohibit lawyers from advertising that they specialize in particular areas of the law. This show should not be construed to suggest such specialization. Nothing on this show should be taken as legal advice for any individual case or situation. This information is not intended to create an attorney-client relationship, and the listening or viewing of this podcast does not constitute an attorney-client relationship. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.